Again I say, I am the soul of my universe of creating things. Within my being is desire for manifesting my being. Desire in me is soul in me. That which is soul in me desireth to manifest in form through light. Light extendeth from soul in me, and returneth to soul in me. The extension and returning being two seeming lights of me. Again I say, I am the seed of my unfolding, refolding universe. Within my light all formless seed of planned ideal are enfolded in my being, at rest in me. Again I say, all things extendeth from me and returneth to me. From me all things are born, from seed of thought in me, and born again with each pulsation of my thinking. There is naught but birth in my imagining. There is no death in me, for endings and beginnings are one in me. Naught but life reaches out from me, and naught but life meets returning life for rebirth in me. Wherefore I say, ye must be born again and again into that infinity of mirrored reachings, which is my imaging. Thus is my one ideal continued endlessly in imaged forms of my thinking. Thus is my one ideal reborn as many ones in the multiplying mirrors of my light forever without end. Again I say, the mirrored multiples of my thought images are but reflections of my imagining. They are not me. Next chapter. The unfolding, refolding principle. The two opposite electric expressions of desire of mind unfold all ideal of mind from its pattern in the seed into imaged forms to simulate the ideal of mind, and refold it back into its recorded pattern in the seed for again unfolding. Each one unbalances the other in order that each may seek balance in the other, to disappear and reappear as the other. Positive electricity is the father light, which gravitates toward a point of rest which centers all creating things. Negative electricity is the mother light, which radiates toward planes of the one light at rest, which bound all wave fields of motion. Positive electricity winds the light of motion into dense solids around points of still magnetic light. It compresses motion into incandescent spheres surrounded by the vacuity of negative electricity. Negative electricity unwinds the light of motion from dense solidity to tenuous vacuity by expanding it into cubic wave fields of space. Positive electricity pulls inward spirally from within against the opposing resistance of negative electricity, which thrusts outward spirally from within. This two-way radial universe of seeming motion is the product of these two opposed electric conditioners of matter, which pass through each other in opposite directions. Each interchange with the other in sequential pulsations as they pass through each other from points of gravity to wave-field boundaries, and back again in endless cycles. Each becomes the other at halfway rest points of their cycle. Large-scale examples of this process can be seen in any of the spiral nebula. Two fiery spiral arms of radiating mother light reach out from the equator of its central sun to born its countless other suns and earths by unfolding them from its centering seed. Two black arms of gravitating father light pull spirally inward from the heavens toward the poles of the centering giant sun to generate the sun in incandescent oneness of all form. The father light of gravity refolds all unfolding forms from creation's seed in formless light of suns and gives them growing bodies. It shows here a spiral nebula with the sun in the center and all the spiraling planets and everything around it. Gravitation is the male principle of creation. Gravity refolds toward the seed. Radiation is the female principle of creation. Radiation unfolds from the seed. The generating light of gravitation and the degenerative light of radiation are projected through each other from rest to rest in pulsing sequences to manifest ideal by borning father-mother forms of ideal through their voiding interchange. This principle of rhythmic balanced interchange between father-mother lights of gravitation and radiation is fundamental in all creating things. It is the principle of two-way equal giving which manifests the quality of love in the light of the one. Now some words from God. Translate thou the light of my thinking into man's words for his guidance. I am balance. In me all my imaginings are balanced in their seeming unbalance. I add, but that which I add to one pulsation of my thinking I subtract from the other one. I divide, but that which I divide I multiply. My pairs of opposites are equal, but again I say that they are opposites, and opposites opposed in my universe of me. Opposites void opposites, while likes retain their friendly orbits side by side. All the sons of heaven give light to each to each, while the dark voids the light, and the light likewise the dark. My two lights move in opposed ways to avoid the other's path, but find these paths to be lanes leading into and out of vortices centered by but one rest pole, where the two poles are not, having never even met as two. Pairs of opposites are drawn into each other's vortices, where they void each other passionately. Each is then naught, a zero, simulating that zero of their source from which they sprang, but they are also seed for another seeming two, which emerge from the oneness of their source. Next chapter, the illusion of attraction and repulsion of matter. One of the great illusions of the senses is that matter attracts and repels matter. It is also believed that oppositely charged electrical particles attract each other and like charges repel. There is much evidence to the senses to justify such a conclusion, but it is of the same elusive nature as the evidence which deceives the senses that railroad tracks seem to meet upon the horizon. We see the tides rise toward the moon on one side of the earth and away from it on the other. We conclude that the moon attracts the earth and thus pulls the ocean toward it, but that does not account for the fact that the tides also rise on the opposite side of the earth away from the moon. What is actually happening is that all conditioned matter is constantly seeking to balance its condition with all other matter. The moon and the earth center their own respective wave fields surrounded by space. All wave fields are bound by planes of zero curvature and a zero pressure condition which insulate each field in the universe from every other field. The very shapes of wave fields of earth and moon are forever changing to adjust their balance as the moon revolves around the earth. As a result, the mutual equators of both fields must lengthen, disc-like, on a plane which intersects the center of gravity of each body. Naturally, the tides rise toward and away from the moon. If the earth were all liquid instead of solid, it likewise would lengthen appreciably at its equators, disc-like, and flatten at its poles to meet the interchange of balance between the fields of the moon and sun, as Jupiter and the outer planets are so noticeably doing. It would also throw off rings as Saturn and all the stars of heaven are doing, and for the same reason.